Okay, this is a really quick and easy tutorial on creating a CGA script that will apply an extrusion based on a number of stories of a footprint of a building and also apply a color and opacity. I'm working off of the 2014 version of City Engine, which shouldn't be too different from your 2015 version, but if you have any questions, just shoot me an email or ask me in class. But we begin by creating a rule, and to create that, you just right-click in your project folder that you're working in, right-click the Rules folder, and select New CGA Rule file. We're going to call this rule Extrusion. When you click on Finish, a CGA rule, a blank CGA rule would have been created, and the window should appear next to your scene window. You can maximize that window if you just simply want to look at the CGA script itself as you're creating it, or you can just make the manual adjustment so that you can see more of the window. Let's begin the CGA code by setting up our attributes. So to type in notes to yourself, you use the pound symbol, and we're just going to create a box which is where we will place all of our attributes. So just type in a bunch of pound codes and let's just set that box up. This is not going to mean anything in a code. This is just for the user to understand what's in here are my attributes. So let's begin by setting the color attribute. So this CGA script is going to extrude this building footprint that you see here in your viewport by a value, and that value is going to be based on the attributes that came in from your GIS data. So for instance, this building footprint came in with the number of stories. We don't necessarily know, we don't have that data for this particular data set, what height each story is, so we'll have to accommodate for an average of that in our rule. So that's another attribute that we'll add in here, and in addition to height we'll have a color. So CGA script, you can use RGB values to generate color, but it's best that you work with HTML code. If you're not sure exactly what color you want to use, just go to a Google browser and search HTML color codes, and there are many different websites that are out there that provide you with the actual code for a particular color. So for instance, white is pound FFFFFF. Okay, so let's begin by setting up our color attribute. Attributes are always set up with ATTR, and it's we're going to just assign a color, but we're also going to have the ability within the CGA script to change what that color will be. So let's type in white and the color code for white. Always put your actual values in between quotation marks. Okay, so that's pound and 6 F's and quotation. So that's our first color. The other variable in the CGA script is going to be the number of stories that this building will have. So our second attribute is stories. And it's important that the way that you write attributes here, try to be consistent with that throughout your CGA script, and you'll see what I mean in a second. We're just going to assign a value so that our attribute will work. We'll assign a value that is random, so RAND 1,30. That's just to get this script, and make sure that you close the parentheses. And that's just to make sure the script works. You will be able to exceed 30 if you need to, as you'll see in a minute. And then close your attributes box. And of course, you could always go back and add more attributes later. So let's start with the actual CGA itself. You begin by typing in lot, and that represents the beginning shape file, the beginning footprint of the building. and 2 dashes and the greater than symbol. That's how you begin the rule. So this rule's name is going to begin with lot, 2 dashes, and greater than. And then the first part of the rule is the extrude part. So we type in extrude, and we're extruding this by a value which we've set up as an attribute already. So rather than typing it yourself, just copy it from your attribute list. So I selected this and I copied it and I pasted it, just to make sure there's no errors. So let's say that we can also use absolute values if you have it in your GIS data. Hopefully your GIS data will already have come with some geoprocessing. In this example, I only have 4 as the number of stories. You may actually have exact heights of a building in feet or whatever, so you can do your conversion within the CGA script. So for instance, the number of stories for this footprint is 4 stories, and I know that each story in this building is, say, 14 feet high. So I'm going to multiply that by a conversion value of 4.3, because remember, this is in a metric system. Then I'm going to assign the color. Now we have the color white as an attribute. However, once this rule is finished, we'll be able to change this to anything we want based on the HTML code that we look up, the HTML color code. And then the final thing that I want this rule to be able to do is this rule is really being created for buildings that are context buildings. They're not part of our design. They're just background existing buildings. We don't want a lot of attention drawn to them. And we know that our current set of rules that we're using from Redlands Redevelopment or from other rule packages, some of those rules kind of have a lot of features and parameters that allow us to do a lot of different things, and many different colors and things like that, and different ways of expressing the footprint of a shapefile. And this, we just want simple extrusion, a simple color, and maybe a little bit of transparency to just kind of like push it in the background. So let's set that transparency, and that's transparency in CityEngine is pretty much material opacity. So what level of opacity will that material have? And the way that we set that is by typing set, and we type in material.opacity, and we have to make sure that our spelling is accurate or else the rule won't work. And we're just going to set it to 0.7, so it's going to be 25% transparent. An opacity of 0.75 is 25% transparent. Okay, so now that the rule is done, we can hit save. Or actually, I'm just going to close it. Close the rule. And it'll ask if you want to save it. You say yes. This is your new extrusion CGA. Okay, so once your rule is tucked away, it's saved, it's where you want it to be, apply your rule. Now in the 2014 version, you can simply apply a rule by dragging it onto the shape. And I think you can also do that in the 2015 version. So here is what that rule will look like now. So you have a you set the number of stories and the color as a attribute, so you have it's a parameter in your CGA. You have the ability to change that. So if I wanted to, I can open this dialog box, which is a feature of CityEngine, and I can pick a different HTML, or I can pick a different color from their library of basic colors, and it'll change that HTML code for me. Or if I know exactly what HTML code I want to use, I can just pull that from an internet or other source and type that in here, and it'll update the HTML code because it's a variable. It's an attributed variable. And also your number of stories is based on the layer itself in this case, but it could be user defined and so forth, and it's going to be stories multiplied by 4.3, which is a conversion factor. And there you have it. You have just created your first CGA script. Congratulations.